Hello. We're going to be working on an art activity today that's going to involve you using your name, and you're going to draw it and color it in a kind of unique way. We're going to look at the element of art, line, and the principle of design, contrast, and we're going to put those ideas together in this piece of art. I've got a lot to share with you, so let's get started. Before we start with the art activity, I'd like you to take a look at the artwork of Charles White. We'll have a little bit of an art history lesson. Take a look at the clothing. Take a look at the lightness and the darkness of the clothing, the way the light seems to melt right into the dark. Last year there was an art exhibition at the Modern Museum of Art in New York City and the Art Institute of Chicago highlighting Charles White's work.
I've never seen anyone cry at an artwork except his.
He was one of the great humanists among artists of the 20th century.
And just the mastery. Technically, the man was just a brilliant artist.
White was born in Chicago in 1918 and studied at the School of the Art Institute, starting actually when he was a 7th grader. He spent much time in the galleries as a child.
My mother, when she went shopping, would leave me at the public library. The Art Institute of Chicago was in close proximity. I wandered through the galleries, studying each pictures. I remember Winslow Homer became one of my favorite painters, and George Ennis, the early Hudson River School landscapers.
He would take trips with his mother, starting about age 9, down to Mississippi, meet these aunts. Aunt Bessie, Aunt Missouri, Hasty Baines.
To me, that's the most gorgeous hand I've ever seen. I mean, look at the tips. Goodness gracious. Like, it's really hard to get something that's so stylized, but yet feels so natural. Even that slight highlight right there, he really must have worked his way to get that distinction between the hand and the sweater and the pants. Like, that's really difficult to do in a monochromatic palette.
He's taking oil paint out of a tube and he's thinning it down incredibly with turpentine, with solvents, until it's really, really thin. And then he's using rags and Q-tips and sticks to draw with that very, very thinned out paint. Once you make a mark with that oil wash, you can't take it back.
This amazing, presence of a man with glasses. Like, aviators never looked so good. He may have even come to this around the 70s or maybe even later, that he's like, I don't have to create everything for something. It can just be for me to explore.
I've tried to deal with beauty, the beauty in man, and that essentially I feel that man is basically good. I have to start from this premise in all my work.
And even though the work is often depicting scenes from the Black community, it's not just speaking to the Black community.
His work was dedicated to bringing people together and creating understanding.
We all face these kind of things of feeling like maybe our voice isn't heard, feeling shut down individually. I don't feel that when I look at my father's work.
Charles White was so skilled at using his lines to create value contrast. We're going to take a look at value. This is a value scale. You've probably seen this before in your art class. And this is a value gradation scale. So you can see how it goes from the whitest white to the blackest black very, very gradually. Now when we use value, we have to build it up. So we can start out with the lightest value, and then another layer of a darker value, and a darker value, and so forth. Take a look at Mark Crilly. He's a modern day artist who does a lot of YouTube videos and is a great teacher when it comes to sharing about skills. Take a look. So he's done a contour drawing of folds in a fabric, and he's gently starting to add the first layer of value. Notice where he's holding the pencil. When he's doing the lightest value, he's holding the pencil way at the end. And he's almost letting gravity just put the marks on the paper, put the lines on the paper, not putting much pressure at all. As we take a look at this, as he starts to add the next level of value, a little bit darker, he'll move his hand a little bit further up the pencil. And then when he's going to add the very darkest, he'll go to the very tip of the pencil near where the lead is exposed. Take a look. So I think it's so fun to take a look at artists and the way they use their techniques. I feel like I can learn so much from them, and I know you feel the same. And take a look at this clip from Pencil Stash.
Different pressures will transfer different amounts of pigment. Many of us have a tendency to be heavy-handed with our pressure, so if you're having trouble being light, hold the pencil in your hand further back away from the tip. This makes it more difficult to push so hard. Then move your hand further up for medium pressure and even further for hard pressure. With light pressure, you keep your options open for many different techniques such as layering and blending, which we'll get into later. But you'll see that when applying light pressure, the coverage you get is minimal, meaning it leaves lots of white space. So you may need several passes of color to get the coverage you desire. Medium pressure allows you more coverage and more pigment into the paper. Hard pressure applies the most saturated pigment, but limits your ability to layer other colors into it or on top of it. You'll also notice that even though I've used the same colored pencil in all three of these circles, I've achieved almost 3 different colors based on the pressure I've used. So this is another useful skill to extend the color range at your disposal.
So let's make some art. You're going to need these following materials: paper, pencil. You'll need a ruler or a straight edge. You can use color pencils if you happen to have them at home. You're going to draw your name non-objectively. Non-objective art is a very special kind of abstract art where you can't really recognize any objects or anything. It's just really appreciating shape and color and the way they all work together. Here's a list of vocabulary words. I'm not going to read them to you, but I'd like you to pause the video right now and just review them for yourself. Here are your instructions for drawing the letters. Just use it as a reference. So first of all, gather your materials. I would suggest using your name if it's between 7 and 9 letters, and you can use part of your middle name, part of your last name. You're going to draw these letters in all capital letters. You're going to overlap the letters. You're going to touch the top of the paper and touch the bottom of the paper. And you do have to keep in mind there are some special letters like L and E and F. And you'll see me as I'm drawing them because I'm drawing my last name. And when I get to the letter E, I'm letting the horizontal lines of the top of the E and the bottom of the E just kind of disappear, because if I draw them in, it might look a little bit funny in the composition. Remember, we're just using your name to get some interesting shapes is what we're doing. You may need to try this several times. I know I did. And even after I got this composition from drawing, I still had to go back because there was some empty space, some negative space I needed to fill in, and I just added some extra lines just to make the composition more pleasing. And then start shading. Keep in mind the whole lesson has to do with value contrast. So lightness on one side of the shape melts into darkness on the other side. And there you have it, your name in abstract. Here are a couple student pieces, and they were able to use color pencil. So if you have color pencil at home, give it a try. As an extension activity, I invite you to draw drapery. I know that sounds kind of boring, but it's actually really satisfying. Find some images online of just cloth and sheets that are shaded where the light is hitting it in a certain way, and try to draw it using your skills. So that's it for today. I hope you are well. Be patient with yourself and others, and I hope you make some art.